Thank you, Katie. Wow. Can I just say wow? It's 4 o'clock on the 30th. And I knew the moment this email came out for the Ned Talks from Katie that I had to do it. And I jumped in and gave my pitch the next day. And it was one version. And I told the Common House CAG I didn't really know what I was going to say because I've never spoken I've spoken quite a bit in public, but I've never spoken from a script. And I've certainly never shared the story as I am today. And so to be here now with my neighbors and Fred Moore, the man that is my dear friend that is on the call, is the man that's been in my right hand for the last 5 years, holding me through so much, as my buddy, soulmate, partner, playmate, co-conspirator of my life, mentor. I'm sweating. My palms are sweaty. My heart's like, can I really do this? It's one thing to speak to hundreds and thousands of people that you don't know. And it's another thing to speak to your neighbors that you know are on the other side of the wall or the other side of the pedway, and you're actually going to see these people on a regular basis. So thank you so much for showing up. I love seeing every one of your faces, and I'm super grateful for this place that I can share. And hold tight 1 second, because now I just put it in speaker view and it's not showing me, which is, I'm recording this so that I can share it with others. And I thought I had this part down. Fascinating. Okay. Pin video. Let's try that. Perfect. Okay. Got technology. All right. So my journey starts, the part that I'm going to share starts when I was 26 years old. When I was 26 years old, I had accomplished every goal that I wanted in my life. In my teen years, I learned what a triathlon was, and I learned what Hawaiian Ironman was. And I said, I will do that. I had a swimming background. I had never owned a bike of any consequence. I had never run anywhere other than being away from being chased by my sister. But I said, I will do that. And it was one of those deep knowings. And the other visions I had for my life were being the fitness director in the fitness industry, having a man in my life, having a lot of money, and enjoying my life. And by age 26, I had trained for and raced an Ironman. And on my first attempt at racing Ironman, I qualified for the Hawaiian Ironman World Championships. And I did my first Ironman in August and my second Ironman 5 weeks later. And that goal was done. And that goal was a huge deal because I had broken down this thing that I had never heard of prior to me deciding I would do it. Created a training plan, stuck to the training plan, brought in teammates, brought in training partners, asked for help when I needed it. And I wasn't swayed by anything. I was able to keep my focus on Ironman while working a full-time job in the fitness industry in the Silicon Valley during the dot-com years, while buying a house, while getting married, while all these other things that were going on. I wanted Ironman. It didn't make sense to anyone logically, but I never questioned it. It was what I had to, it was like in my bones. It was what I had to do. And I did it. And along that way, I zipped through the fitness industry. I had incredible success in my short 5-year fitness industry career. And right after I did Ironman, I got really clear that the fitness industry was not actually serving who we were trying to serve. We were there, we were on site, and the big Silicon Valley companies providing fitness facilities, but those people that were into fitness were showing up, and those people that really needed support weren't there. And by that time, I had gotten married, and I had realized that my husband also came with a trust fund. I didn't really care about money at that time, but all of a sudden we were making $30,000 a month on paper, and I was making $30,000 a year at this job I was getting increasingly frustrated at. And I left my job in tears. I told them I would figure out the answer to happiness, to weight loss, to these things, and I would be back. But for right now, I was done. Most of my friends at the time, it didn't make sense because we had bought our house and we had done all of these things that we hadn't had to work for this money. This money had been handed to us at the loss of my mother-in-law, but it had been handed to us. And it was handed to us at a time when money was growing on trees for many, many, many people. The dot-com years were this crazy fantasy. We all know it. We've all been there. We all were there. But in my 20s, it became this might as well life. It became this, after having these years of living an inspired life, I dropped into this kind of fantasy land where I didn't any longer have direction. I didn't any longer know what I wanted. And so whatever came along is kind of what I took. And my husband and I got married, and then we decided we would travel for a year. So sure, we traveled for a year. And we spent part of the time in this country, and we spent part of the time out of the country. But all through that, my mind never stopped because I didn't feel like I deserved it. I felt like I hadn't worked for this. I wasn't working hard enough. I had all kinds of self-worth, self-loathing. I hated myself. We were in New Zealand riding our bikes around those beautiful islands, and I was struggling. I was enjoying it also, but the inner turmoil was intense. And my relationship with myself got more and more distant, but my relationship with my husband was also strained because I just didn't understand what was going on. And this continued for the next bunch of years. It continued for quite a long time where I was lost. I didn't have goals. I had kind of accomplished everything, and I would say that out loud, but I didn't know what to do about it. And we had our babies. I had my first daughter right about age 30, and that was good. That was great. Motherhood was hard for me. It was one of those crucibles of just challenge. And then I was about to have my second baby. I was 6 months pregnant, and I was telling my girlfriend how food had become this issue and how frustrating it was for me. I was sick of food being an issue in my life. I had gone to 12-step program trying to fix this issue. And my girlfriend said, you might want to meet my friend Dickon. And the very short version of the story is, I called Dickon. And 5 days later, that's not true, I just lied. 3 weeks later, my husband and I went away for 5 days. Our 2-year-old was taken care of, and we went up to Seattle, Washington. We got on an airplane. We went up to Seattle, Washington, and we spent 4 days with this man, Dickon. And Dickon looked at me on the third day of our time, because I was saying, he was teaching us about thought and how we don't have to believe our stories and our thinking and how there's always something greater. And I was like, yeah, but I've got an eating disorder. Tell me what you're going to do about that. That's what I'm here to fix. I've got a problem and I want it solved. And I actually really want it solved yesterday. And Dickon looked me in the eye, and he's this man that's about 20 years older than I am. And he's just this teddy bear of love. And he looked at me and he said, Susanne, what if your eating disorder is just a coping mechanism? What if you've used that as your way to get through life thus far and you're done with it? And that sank into my bones. It sank into the marrow. It sank into the blood in my whole system. And I knew it was true for me. And I knew in that moment it was true for every single person, that if I wasn't a problem and didn't have a problem I had to solve, no one did. The only problem we had was that it was a thinking problem. And I knew it because there were times when it was like food was eating me. There were times when I couldn't get a long enough run to get rid of my problems. But there were also times when I didn't have to do exercise or food because I was just clear. And that night I went to bed and I didn't sleep. And I laid awake all night going, oh my gosh, this is what I will do for the rest of my life. This is what I will share. I will scream the fact that we don't have to manage our thinking from the top of every mountain. And I wish I could tell you that that was the end of that. But then I went back to my life. I came back to Colorado to a 2-year-old, to a newborn baby about 10 weeks later. And I got hooked back into the treadmill of life and doing everything I could to keep up and thinking my mind had to control everything and forgetting over time pretty much everything Dickon had said. Forgetting that feeling of freedom, of delicious love that I had. And life had something to say about that. Life is what set me back, sent me home to me. So a couple years later, my kids were very young and people started dying. It was 2009. I call it our year of death and dismemberment. A whole bunch of people died. My dad died. My mom had a massive stroke in North Boulder Pool. Joe Miller died. Another friend of ours that was one of the brightest human beings I'd ever met died in an avalanche in the Himalayas. Our cat died. And I couldn't believe that the running, crazy life that I had, with all the riches materially that I could ever want, and all the things, all the trappings of the cultural rightness, I couldn't believe any of it anymore. And I started to question everything. My family thought I was going a little insane. And the truth is, I probably was. It was hard. It was hard to go from Ironman triathlete that's got it, athlete, mom, these things, to, oh my God, what is this life about? And it took me through some hard years. I had a lot to learn. And it ended. My husband and I became more and more disconnected. I was getting more involved in the spiritual community that I had found. I was excited because I felt like people understood me. But I was more and more discontent in my regular life. And I can very clearly in hindsight see that that's what thinking does. That's what believing our thinking does. But I didn't see that then. I just saw that the spiritual community felt like home and where I lived didn't. And in 2012, we were in our backyard building our chicken coop and I was miserable. And I prayed to God that night, please throw me a bone. And the bone I got was, you need 3 months. And my husband and I agreed we needed a break. And I took 3 months and I went to Crestone, Colorado. And Crestone was where the spiritual community was based. The teacher was based. But also I had been offered a home free of charge by someone in the spiritual community for 3 months. So I went and lived alone for the first time in my life. And I'm going to actually speed through this section of my story a little bit. But the outcome of this time was, A, I became much more open to myself than ever. But B, I didn't have the tools yet to know how to stand in my own power. And what happened was a man in the spiritual community decided to take my life in his hands. And he was a friend that had been to our home. And he raped me in the streets of Crestone. And I said, no, no. And he said, this is what you deserve. This is what you need. This is what will help you grow. And I believed him. And it was because I had given my power to so many people for so long that I had no fight in me. I had no ability to fight back. And I took it. And he swore me to secrecy, and I believed him. I listened. I told the spiritual teacher 3 days later, and she said, bodies are no big deal. I tried to reconcile this inside of me, and it took me 7 weeks to tell my husband. And when I told my husband, he blamed me as well, and he kicked me to the curb. He told me to grow up. And that was the last time that I listened to another man and followed. And that was the beginning of me getting to know me. That was the beginning of me connecting back to that inner knowing, that part of me that knew I had to do Ironman, that part of me that had navigated great challenge throughout my life, that part of me that I call God, and really listening. And it was me and God for a whole long time. I had 2 girls I was attempting to raise as well. They have their own stories of those years. They were some hard years. But I slowly started to realize that the voice inside of me I could trust again. And the voice inside of me was always guiding me back to my health. And I got clear on my mission. My mission was God, girls, and gratitude. And that's all I cared about. I didn't know the how. I just knew that being connected to God, taking really good care of myself and my 2 daughters, and living in gratitude, that was what I could do. And then I started to create strategies, which I call training plans, because for me, coming from an Ironman background, training plans made sense. So I made up things like do sanitas for 30 days straight, meditate for 30 days straight, 90 days of writing, all kinds of different ways that I did it. And through those training plans, I started to really believe I could trust my inner voice no matter what. And when I got an Epstein-Barr diagnosis 3 years ago, I went, no way, my body is not taking me down after all that I've been through. No way. And I went full mama bear for me for the first time in my life. And I changed the way I ate overnight, and I changed the way I did my life overnight. And that was when I gave myself permission to rein in all of the places my energy was going that weren't actually serving my purpose on this planet. And I gave myself permission to question every thought I had ever believed about myself, whether it was worthiness or whether it was unforgivable or whether it was my fault, whatever it was. And as I've done that over the years, what I've gotten to see is the one that was missing in my life was me. The one I had forgotten about and kind of left behind was me. And I started to, instead of hating myself, which I had done for so long, I started loving myself. I've gotten so gentle over these last handful of years with how I treat my body, my mind, and my life. And that doesn't mean it's always perfect. It doesn't mean I don't have crummy thoughts come up. Doesn't mean I don't go, oh, you dork, whatever it is. But it means that my trajectory went to God, girls, and gratitude, and it has been relentlessly true. And it means that I say no to things that I can't do, even when they're great, because I know I'm on a mission to support myself in becoming the best of myself and to support those in my practice. And I keep finding that every time I give myself permission to be fully me and find my voice and my heart and my love in the world, that comes back to me 6,000 million fold. And I want you to know, if you take nothing else away from what I'm saying today, that no matter where you are and no matter where you've been, you deserve and can have the life you desire. It takes some work, because we have to work a little bit at getting out of our own way, at least I did, and getting on with the life that we were meant to live. But that amazing, brilliant, successful, the true definition of success life awaits. And that's what our world is calling for. Thank you. I want to share one thing with you that is Marianne Williamson's quote from A Return to Love as I wrap up. It's a quote that I've had near me for a long, long time, but it's even more delicious as I read it to my clients now and as I read it to other people, because I just see the potential in every human being. And I always have. I just never before had the discernment that even though I see everybody's brilliance, there's also a place to choose who's in our life and how we do our life. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us, it's in everyone. And as we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. Thank you, neighbors. Love you all.
Thank you so much, Susanne. Let's give her some love, some hands.
Thank you,
So
Susanne.
appreciate you, so loving you. We have just 2 minutes if someone had a very quick question or response, or just wanting to send out your voice.
That was a story beautifully shared. Thank you.
I actually can't see who's talking, but thank you.
I think that was AB.
Oh, awesome. Thank you, AB.
If you want to talk, just unmute yourselves.
Much gratitude for your honesty all of your life.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susanne. I enjoyed listening to you very much.
Thank you, Carol.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Susanne. And I'm going to turn over the host position to each of our Common House CAG members has been holding one of these beloved speakers and talks in their